Good morning. Good morning. How's everybody doing? Welcome back. It's been a few days without recording, um, and I definitely missed this chatting. Um, so over the last few weeks, I had a funeral that I was attending of somebody that I knew that passed away, and when you attend a funeral, it does make you think about certain things. And the funeral was at a church, um, which meant it was my first time in a church in a very, very long time. The last time I was in a church, I went to a mega church. It was around the time that I had left Jehovah's Witnesses, and I was like just trying different churches, just trying to see before I deconstructed from Christianity. Um, and I tried a bunch of different churches, and I started to see the patterns, right? While Jehovah's Witnesses may have been a lot more extreme in certain circumstances, the Christianity as a whole has certain holes that I just couldn't be patched up, right, by any church, by any denomination. So that's when I stopped some years ago. Yeah, easily over 5 years now. And so that was the last time I was in a church. And the last time I was in a church, it wasn't a great experience because it was a mega church. And I think just because I grew up in Jehovah's Witnesses, where congregations are smaller and more intimate, a mega church environment just wasn't my environment. So I didn't have a great experience in a bigger church. Let's call it that. So we go to the funeral, and you know, I've buried other people before, relatives, and but this was so sudden, and it was so, I know the whole family, so it's the father who passed away, and it was just very, very emotional. Um, but going to the church, just being in that environment, this particular church, um, it was, an old school type of church where it's a nice building tucked away in the suburbs, and it felt very much like a community. Very beautiful, kind-hearted, down-to-earth people. And, my wife and I were talking about this. Would we ever go back to church? You know, because there are elements of churches, mosques, synagogues that, when you take the theology away, are amazing, right? And it always comes down to community. And if you have a great community, that's a big win, right? If you're gathered around a theology, if that theology produces somewhat good outcomes, for the most part at least, that's the best you can hope for, right? Meaning, if you have a good community of people who are accommodating, kind-hearted people, and you feel like you belong, right? You belong to those people, and they take care of each other. And they're not extreme in their Christian views, in that if you do this, we're going to kick you out, or views around homosexuality, that kind of thing, that causes a lot of divisions amongst people. If they're moderate, right? Now, there are going to be certain areas, every community, whether it's religious or not, will have their own preferences, right? Um, so you're going to have to take the good with the bad. But if you have that, a place for your kids to have friends, a place for you to meet other families, it's a great, great experience. So we were discussing this. Would we ever go back to church? And for it's I would, for my family. Um, but if you're asking me, I would only go to a church where I can meet, I can improve my networking, right, for business. So because that's going to be the only value for me that I'm going to get from a church. And we were talking about this, and it sounds crass, it sounds uh, transactional, that sort of thing. But when you think about it, churches have been a ground for business, for commerce, since the dawn of time, right? When Jesus was casting out the merchants from the church, that story reveals that this was a pattern. This is something that used to happen all the time, right? Um, and today we see in churches. I mean, there was a skit that Drewski did of mega churches asking for money, and it was funny. But when you watch other churches online, they're way more extreme than a comedian doing a skit of a church demanding money from its people, right? So you think of the mega churches asking for money for private jets. You think of the pastors having Bentleys delivered to their doorstep and telling congregants, you need to contribute for me to pay for this Bentley. Um, you know, so commerce has been a part of church for the longest of time, right? If you look at the beginnings of Christianity, the Roman Catholic, money is a big part of the whole operation. Every single church, money is a big part of the operation, right? But even in congregations, if you look at, let's say, Jehovah's Witnesses, for people who are fully immersed in Jehovah's Witnesses and don't want to associate with people outside, they will build a community around, and you'll work with other Jehovah's Witnesses. So your job or your businesses are around Jehovah's Witnesses, right? There are people who sell Armageddon kits as Jehovah's Witnesses. So commerce is a part of business, a part of church. It's part of community, and I think I'm at a point where I'm no longer lying to myself, right? So the value for me would be, hey, does this church have a certain culture, certain individuals um, who would fit well into my network and help me achieve the things that I need to achieve? That will be the biggest value for me personally. For my family, obviously, it'll be the family environment. Are there other families, that kind of thing? But I'm not going there for theology, right? I'm not going to any church for theology. I'm going there for fellowship, But it'll be tough because I don't believe in any of the stuff they're saying. And watching the pastor speak, it was bittersweet, like it was very difficult for me, So the words of comfort for the family. So this is from my perspective, what I was wanting for the family is for them to have those words of comfort from a pastor. But true to fashion, they start talking about Jesus is the one, and you need to give your life to Jesus. And I'm thinking, they just lost their father, you know. Right now, that's not what they need to hear. They just need to hear some comforting words. Um, and people just sort of sit through it. Um, and it's like there's a time and place for everything, or there's a way to go about it where if it was, let me just say that there's a way to go about it. And, you know, they just lost me when they started going on about Jesus, and you need to do this, you need to do that, and the day this, and um, when somebody passes away, I think it's not the forum to start pushing your message. I think there's a way to weave the message in, right? The message of hope, the message of um, what the Lord is doing for the family, and comforting the family, rather than them needing to convert. I don't know. It just, and I think that's something that I would struggle with. But I'm not lying to myself anymore. I'm honest with myself and say, hey, if I don't believe in the theology at all, um, you know, I think I'm at a point where I still believe there's God. I just don't think God is Christian or Jewish or Islamic, right? Um, there's just no way. There's no way God wants you to have 72 virgins in heaven. I don't want 72 virgins. right? I don't want one virgin, right? I'm not interested, right? There's just no way, right? There's just no way God commands and demands human sacrifice and blood and the slaughtering of babies and the pillaging of women, and, to the point where the kings who didn't follow that command to the T, he was angry at them. Um, Whether it was allegorical or whatever, the fact that that story is there to to make whatever point it's making, it's revealing a certain character trait that I just don't think is what we call God, right? Um, and so, yeah, I would go to church today, but for commerce. So now the question is money now my God, right? I think that's the next question. Is money your God now? So if you're going there for networking purposes, is are you making uh, money your God? And I just don't think that's true. I think you have to find the value where you find it, right? So in this context, for my family, there's a lot of value if there's a great community, right? The only value for me personally, outside of my family, is networking, right? Because that's what I spend my time doing. So I need things that add value to it, not take away from it. If I find a good community, then yeah, sure, why not? The all the other stuff that comes with it, I would love it, But the big utilitarian value for me is networking and commerce with people that hopefully I would like, right? Then that's a winner right there. That's a winner right there. So it's not that money is everything. Money is a lubricant, or commerce rather is a lubricant. So, for example, you'll find that you will get closer to your friends if you have a group of friends and you do business with half of the group of friends and the other half you just meet for drinks and you go cycling or whatever the case may be. You'll find that the friends that you do business with, you'll get closer and closer. The relationship improves, right? And that's something that we miss, and that there's a spirituality to commerce, to trading, to doing activities together. Um, Entrepreneurship in itself is a great teacher because it's just a long series of failures that force you to look in the mirror, and nothing is going to improve until you improve. Now, imagine going on that journey with your friends. Number one, it's really, really hard. All the stories you hear are going to happen in your friend, right? Somebody's going to be not showing up and pulling their weight. Somebody's going to take money on the side here and there, right? All these things will be revealed. Now, how do you navigate through all of those turbulence, all of that turbulence, as a group of friends? That's why I've a lot of respect for people who are able to go into business with family and friends and weather the storm. Now, with family, it's different. I mean, if your child steals some money, you're gonna just slap them on the wrist type of thing. But if it's a friend or something like that, and depending on how much and how they did it, it could really break things apart, right? I know people who went into business together. On the first contract they do, the one partner takes money and goes buys himself a Range Rover, and there's no money left in the business, and that can kill relationships, right? Um, but just the idea of this journey of going on this journey with your friends is something that I think is just amazing and spiritual in nature. I really, really believe that. I take this from the Jewish concepts around business that um, when you do business, you are helping someone. That's why they're paying you, right? With something they need. Even something as silly as these designer bags. There's something that the women who are buying and men who are buying these bags are getting from these bags. Whether it's status, whether it's self-validation, external validation, right? They want that and they need that. And that's something that they're paying for. And so every business is helping somebody else, right? most businesses, right? Um, if we take away the extremes, the edge cases, most businesses are going to be helping someone in some way, right? And we forget that part that here on earth, how does God take care of his kids or its kids? Um, well, business is a big part of that, right? Now it's how you conduct yourself. Just like being a Christian, how you conduct yourself is going to be important. If you say you're a Christian, but you conduct yourself in a promiscuous manner, in a violent manner, in a argumentative manner, right? Um, then those two things can't mix. So you can do business and you can do it. You can be a mean boss or you can be a kind servant leader, right? So how you do business is the question. Yeah. How you go about making your money is the question. It's not that you shouldn't go out there and make money or you shouldn't be thinking about it, right? There's a spirituality to it. Now, it has its proper place. It's not everything. Um, but yeah, I think the people who say that you're making money of God are people who are afraid to confront the truth and the reality of life and to put money in its proper place. Sometimes people put money way too low and others put money way too high, right? Or their careers. You hear all the time people who sacrifice everything, their family, their friends, everything for their careers. Yes, they're making money from the careers, but it's their career that the sacrifice is for. But everybody will just say, oh, they wanted money. Um, and, it's overly simplistic. And there are people who put it way too low, right? Where it's the family suffering and it's like, hey, we need money, we need food on the table. And they say, no, money's, man shall not live on bread alone. Right? So those two extremes are just extremes, right? It has its proper place. Some people need to elevate it from where they place it, and some people need to sort of bring it down from the pedestal they've put it on. And we've all encountered those types of people, right? Who money is everything for them. And, you know, and it's important to understand it's a journey. Everyone goes through a journey. And there's going to be periods where you do put money above everything else because that's what the season calls for. Then there's going to be a season where you got to take it down and put it in its proper place, and it becomes the last thing on the totem pole, right? Understanding what the season you're in is and adjusting accordingly, I think is way more important than just looking at things in one dead state, right? I think every state is a living state. There's states that came before that caused this state, and this state is going to cause the next state, right? Just like life and existence, it's just a bunch of causes, right? Causing into each other. Um, and if you just take one cause and effect and say, boom, that's it, you miss out on the whole context. You know what I mean? So, anyways, um, just thought I'd talk about that and just remember my friend and, you know, and, I'll see you guys next time.